This podfic contains content that may be disturbing for some viewers, including mentions of violence, guns, and physical and emotional abuse. Please check out the complete list of content warnings in the description, and proceed with caution if you are sensitive to these topics.
Hello, my lovely little gemstones. It's Saphira, and today I'll be reading When the Chips Are Down by Whiskey with Patron. Chapter 36. Oh shit, we've been kidnapped. Remus woke with a pounding headache. A dull throb settled in his arm, as if someone had jabbed a needle into it. He groaned in pain and tried to move his arms, but they wouldn't budge. A small jolt of panic woke him up faster. He opened his eyes, but his head spun and he squeezed them shut again. Where even was he? "Oh, look," said a voice, one that was unfamiliar and cold. "One of them's awake. Finally." Remus pried his eyes open to look around him. His vision was slightly blurry, but he squinted through it. He couldn't see much because the room was fairly dark, but he was pretty sure there were a few other people standing around him. Two of them leaned against the wall in front of him, and the other was a vague shape in the shadows. Dark gray walls surrounded him, no door in sight. The vague shape of a person blocked his vision as they leaned down in front of him. They snapped their fingers right in front of his face. He flinched at the sound. "Wake up, kid," a voice said. "We've got something to ask you." Remus shook his head to wake himself up faster. He blinked up at the person as his vision slowly cleared. A tall ginger woman stood in front of him, an orange bracelet dangling from her wrist. Remus narrowed his eyes. It was Miss Sharp, the intern from the school. He knew they shouldn't have trusted her. "Where am I?" Remus asked. Sudden panic washed over him. "Where's Roman?" "He's right behind you," Miss Sharp said. "Still knocked out. Don't worry about him. You should be a lot more worried about yourself." Remus shuddered. Why am I here? What do you want from me?" Miss Sharp tilted her head and gave him a mockingly sympathetic smile. "Aw, are you scared? Don't worry. Everything will be fine if you just tell us everything we want to know. Well, that, and if your family does what we want." "Family?" Remus squeaked. "Who are you talking about?" "Please don't take Virgil. Please don't take Virgil. Please don't take Virgil." "Your father," Miss Sharp said. "Patton Hart. He is your father, right?" Remus said nothing, but the look on his face must have given him away. "Good," she said. "We didn't kidnap the wrong brats." "Don't worry. If he gives himself up, you two get to go free. And I believe someone in Side Hill also has a family friend of yours in her custody. Does the name Remy Dormier ring a bell?" Remus clamped his mouth shut, refusing to say a word. Sharp narrowed her eyes and stepped closer. "Answering my question might be in your best interest. After all, I could always, I don't know, kill your brother. We really only need one of you after all." I know Remy," Remus blurted. He couldn't let them hurt Roman. Sharp smiled. "Good kid. I mean, I didn't really need you to answer that question, since Dormier himself already confirmed it when my colleague questioned him earlier. But it's good to know he wasn't just lying to make it seem like he was cooperating. And it's sure lovely to see that you're willing to do what I want to keep your brother safe." She turned to one of the people behind her. "Ask Chandler what she's doing with Dormier." Remus tried to move, but his limbs wouldn't budge. His arms were bound to the chair he was sitting in. He struggled, but he knew it was no use. He couldn't break out of here. "What are you going to do with us?" Remus asked, voice shaking. "Nothing, if everything goes right," Sharp said. She glanced back at the person she'd spoken to. "Any response?" "She's typing, hang on," the person said. They peered at their phone. "She's keeping Dormier in a holding cell, under accusations of assaulting a cop. She's given him until tomorrow to make up his mind about what he wants to do. Justice himself approved of this." Sharp groaned in exasperation. "We have to keep these fucking kids until tomorrow?" The other person shrugged. "Think so. Couldn't we just call Patton ourselves and get him to give himself up? We don't need Dormier to be a messenger." Sharp raised a brow. "Well, I am curious to see what he does. This might be interesting. And if the boss gave the go-ahead, we should probably do what he wants." She glanced at something to the right of the room. "She say anything else?" "If he doesn't make a decision by tomorrow morning, she's sending people into the Critic House to track down Patton themselves, convincing him to come with us, then killing Dormier and the kids." An ice-cold wave of terror washed over Remus. They were going to kill him and Roman. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run. He frantically tugged at his bonds, desperate to break free. Sharp saw this and sighed. "Calm down, kid. You'll be fine." She nodded towards the something she had been staring at in the right hand of the room. "Or you will be, if your dad does what we want him to." Remus followed her gaze, and his heart pounded faster. Hanging on the wall was a wide variety of guns, knives, and various tools that Remus wasn't even sure he could name. He'd seen enough horror movies to know what those were probably for. Adrenaline thrummed through his veins. He struggled harder, heart beating fast as a hummingbird's wings. He had to get out. He had to get out. He couldn't die. Not here. Not yet. He kicked his legs in a panic, breath coming in short bursts, his vision tunneling, blurry at the edges. Sharp ran a hand through her hair. "I'll go cover our tracks. You two stand guard outside the room." Sharp and the two other people in the room walked past Remus. He heard a door open and close, and then he was left alone. His body wriggled in his chair, trying to move it. It bumped against something right behind him, and he twisted around. He couldn't see much, but he caught sight of someone's arm, tied to the chair behind his. "Roman?" he said. He didn't receive a response, but he heard Roman's shallow breathing, so at least he wasn't dead. Remus kept struggling. He and Roman weren't going to die here, not on his watch. After that, Remus didn't know how long he struggled for, but it was long enough that his fears slowly faded into determination, and then hopelessness. He sat in his chair and did nothing but wish for someone to come in and save him. He cursed at himself in his head, wishing he could do more than just sit here and wait for a rescue. Eventually, he heard Roman move behind him. Remus turned and tried to look, but it was too hard to see. He heard Roman mumble something, and Remus wiggled in his chair. "Roman," he whispered. "Roman, wake up! Are you awake?" Roman grunted. "What?" He inhaled sharply. "Where are we? Remus?" "I don't know," Remus said. "Miss Sharp took us when we went out to her car. We've been here for a while. I don't know how long. Maybe half an hour?" Anger flared up inside him. "She's a bitch, and you never should have trusted her. Shit like this is why you don't trust strangers. I don't want you hurt." Roman's breath quickened. "What is she going to do with us? Are you hurt? Did she hurt you?" "No, I'm fine," he managed. "You? I think I'm okay." Roman's voice was shaky. "Why did she take us?" "She's using us to get to Patton and Remy. She said she wouldn't hurt us. Don't worry. We're just hostages." Remus decided not to tell Roman that Sharp had threatened to hurt them if Patton and Remy didn't do what she wanted. He didn't need Roman to freak out any more than he already was. Roman breathed a short sigh of relief. "Can we try to escape?" "I've been trying, man. I don't think we can." "Dang." Roman leaned back in his chair. His head bumped the back of Remus's. "So, we're stuck here?" "Looks like it." Roman sighed. "Well, shit." Logan waited impatiently at his laptop as the rest of the Chimera agents in the room dispersed. He didn't know if asking this random hacker for help had been the best idea, but he hoped they could provide him with some information. Janus took a deep breath as everyone else left the room. "Found anything?" he asked. "Not yet," Logan said. "The street camera footage I need has been deleted. I'm trying to recover it." "How long might that take?" "I don't know." Janus started fidgeting with his necklace. "Let me know as soon as you find something." "I will." "I'll be in my office," Janus said. He straightened his jacket and strode to the door. Logan stayed sitting at the table in the meeting room, waiting for any response from My Chemical Anxiety. Nothing popped up on his screen for a few minutes, and he began to think that maybe this other hacker had given up. He rocked his chair back and forth on its back legs as he waited. His laptop pinged. His chair toppled back when he jumped at the sound, and the air left his lungs in a sharp oof. He scrambled to his feet, leaving the chair on the floor. He looked down at his laptop screen. A new message from My Chemical Anxiety had appeared. "Okay, so here's what I found," it said. Logan picked up his chair and set it upright. He sat down and waited as Anxiety typed. He couldn't keep himself from impatiently tapping his fingers on the table. A photo message popped up. It was a picture of a map of the entire east side of the city. Red lines trailed the streets, creating a path to the northeast end of the city. The path ended at the end of a street. Another message appeared. I recovered footage from the street cams, but there are no cams past that point, because it's a less populated area. Rath's base is somewhere around there, but I don't know if that's where they took the kids. I haven't seen the kids in any cameras in their HQ, but I did find out the kidnapper's name and general info. Name's Penny Sharp, intern at the middle school, but also a higher-ranking worker at Rath. She was sent to work at the school because Rath found out the kids go to theater practice there. I'm getting into her phone right now and trying to hack it. Let your leader know the kids are somewhere in the east end of the city. Logan heaved a great sigh of relief. They had a lead. They could find the twins. Logan typed out a response. Thank you so much. If you find anything else, please let me know. We can discuss payment later. Logan picked up his laptop and hurried out the door. There weren't many people in the halls, and for that he was grateful. He didn't have to shove his way through anyone in his rush to get to Janus's office. He shouldered open the door to DW's office and made a beeline for Janus's door. He pushed the door open. Jan, I have a lead. Janus had been sitting at his desk, working on his own computer, but he whipped his head up to look at Logan as soon as he spoke. He shot to his feet. What? They're somewhere in the east end of the city. I'm waiting on more information. He paused before he could continue. He probably shouldn't tell Janus that he asked for help outside of Chimera, but saying that likely gave it away. Janus raised a brow. Who are you getting this information from? Just an acquaintance, Logan said. That doesn't matter. Point is, they found a lead on where the twins are. Tell everyone else we're going to the east end of the city. I don't know if we need to make this a full rescue mission or a covert break-in, but letting everyone know would be best. Arm yourself just in case. Tell everyone else to as well. I think Logan trailed off. He was just ordering Janus around. He couldn't do that. Janus was the boss. Logan wasn't. Logan swallowed nervously and took a step back. Darling, I trust you, Janus said. What should we do? Logan hesitated. He took a deep breath. I think we should get going to the east end of the city, he said. Sounds good to me. Janus skirted around his desk and walked to the door. You can direct us there, if you'd like. Logan didn't know if that was an order, or a suggestion, or an offer, so he wasn't quite sure how to respond. He wasn't the best at taking charge. He followed Janus out of the office and back into the hall. He didn't know how this rescue mission was going to end, but for the twins' sake, he hoped it went well. Teal was driving, since both Logan and Janus were too busy to do so themselves. Maggie sat in the passenger seat, armed to the teeth with as many guns and knives as she could fit on her person at once. Logan was busy keeping an eye on his laptop, waiting for his hacker acquaintance to provide him with more information as he directed Teal across the city. They had 2 more cars of agents behind them, with the rest of Chimera ready to speed after them should they need any backup. Janus, however, had decided to contact someone he probably shouldn't be talking to. He stared at the email on his phone, debating over whether or not he should send anything. This one email could completely ruin the working relationship between Chimera and Rath's Blade, but he needed to say something. He read over his own words again. Dear A. Justice, I am aware that I have already responded to your previous email, but I believe I've made an error in judgment in my response. We were never planning on staying out of your business. You're not stupid. I believe you already figured that out. However, since you kidnapped 2 children that are important to me, I am willing to make you a deal. You give us these children, and we will stay out of your business. We will pull agents from downtown and keep them busy uptown, and we will back off on your human trafficking business. At least consider this offer before making a decision. Best wishes, J. Chimera. Janus grimaced. Of course he wasn't really planning on leaving Rath's trafficking business alone, but he was willing to back off from it for a week or so if it would get Roman and Remus back safe. He sent the email and tried to ignore the growing pit of dread in his stomach. He fiddled with the necklace Logan had given him with one hand as he waited for a response. He could be making a big mistake right now. Contacting Rath almost never ended well. Their leader was a temperamental man. An email appeared on his screen. His heart leaped into his throat as he tapped on it. Paragraphs of orange text glared at him through the screen. My dearest Janus Chimera. Janus, dear, you flatter me. Yes, I was aware that you weren't going to stay out of my business, but I am honored that you of all people have decided to reveal the truth to me. Thank you for informing me of this. I appreciate your honesty more than you know. Reminds me of old times. I'm uncertain of which children you're speaking of, but I assume they're the only ones we kidnapped in a pair today. Are they perhaps twins? If so, I may need to think on that offer. These children are very important. They are bait in order to get to someone I'm after. As soon as I have the person I need, I will release the children unharmed, as long as their father does what I want. Even then, who knows? My trigger finger is very twitchy today. I was planning on visiting the kids myself. My employees have come up with some very interesting plans that I'm excited to see play out. And we really only need one child for it. It's been so long since we've seen each other, Janus. I would love to have a little reunion while you attempt to negotiate for these kids of yours. Why don't you stop by and we'll discuss things in person, shall we? I'm sure your little hacker pet has already figured out where we're holding the brats. If not, no matter. We can put off the reunion for another day. Best of luck. A. Justice.
Janus visibly cringed at the email. He found it hard to stand talking to the leader of Wrath, even if it was through email. He was nearly unbearable. It didn't sound like he was going to be of any help at all. And yet, this invitation could be the perfect way to get the kids back, if he played his cards right. Logan, Janus said, inform our backup to stand by. Chapter 37. I'm gay, I'm stressed, and I want to go home. Patton couldn't stop pacing, back and forth across his room like a caged animal. He was safe, sure, but how long would that last? He'd only been in the Critic House for about an hour or two, but the worry was already killing him. He texted Remy a dozen times to see if he was okay, and received no response. He would have called Thomas or Andy, but he didn't know their phone numbers. Remy's absence wasn't the only thing putting Patton on edge. The bag Andy had shoved into his hands before he ran off was sitting there on the floor. He hadn't touched it since he dropped it there, other than to close the flap so he didn't have to see inside it. If it was closed, he could just pretend it was any old bag, one he'd never seen before. He could pretend he hadn't opened it and was oblivious to its contents. But the fact remained that he actually knew what was in there. Andy knew he was Poison Dart, and she'd gone to his old weapons locker. What did she think of him? Did she think he was still a murderer? How did she even find out anyway? Maybe she somehow hacked into something and overheard when Patton threatened the bounty hunters back at the hotel. Patton raked his hands through his hair. Thomas and Andy knew about Patton's past as Poison Dart, and Remy knew about Patton's past with gangs. Great. This was just absolutely perfect. He sat down on the bed and glanced at his phone. Still no response from Remy. A knock at his door made him jump. He scrambled for the gun in his pocket and aimed it at the door in case anyone burst in. It remained closed, so he allowed himself to lower the gun. Maybe he could just pretend he wasn't there. There was another knock at the door. "Patton Hart," a voice said. "We know you're in there." Patton tensed. He kept his gun in his hands as he tiptoed to the door. He peeked through the peephole. 2 security guards in black suits and sunglasses stood outside his door. He didn't know what they were doing here, but he was willing to bet it wasn't anything good. He tucked his gun back in his pocket and opened the door a crack. "What?" "Mr. Critique wants to speak with you," one of the guards said. Patton relaxed, but only a little. These people weren't here to get to him, but now he had to deal with something else. "Give me a minute to get ready," Patton said. He shut the door and turned around. He went straight for his backpack and started digging through it. The owner of the hotel was very picky on the appearance of his special guests. Patton currently looked like he rolled through a ditch and had been attacked by rabid squirrels. He at least needed to comb his hair. He straightened out his hair in the bathroom. Goodness, it was getting long. He needed to get a haircut soon. He also would have liked to shower, but he didn't have time for that. His denim jacket was horribly dirty, so he shucked it off and swapped his t-shirt for a polo shirt he'd forgotten he'd packed. His jeans were mostly fine, so he kept them on, and he hoped the owner wouldn't notice that he was wearing running shoes instead of dress shoes. Just for something extra, he tied his cat hoodie around his shoulders, like he usually did with his cardigans. He hoped the owner was in a good enough mood that he wouldn't throw a fit over Patton tracking dirt into his hotel. Patton debated with himself for a moment, before shoving Remy's gun into the pocket of his jeans. He wasn't going anywhere without a weapon. He hurried back to the door and opened it. The 2 guards in suits were still standing there waiting for him. "I'm ready," he said. Both guards nodded and turned. They started down the hallway and Patton followed, glancing nervously around him, just in case anyone was going to follow him. He had nothing to worry about, especially since he was going to visit the owner of the hotel,
but he still couldn't keep his trigger finger from twitching. He went down a few hallways and entered an elevator. One of the guards slid a keycard into a slot above the floor buttons. The elevator dinged and the door slid shut. Patton stood in mildly awkward silence with the 2 security guards as they traveled upward. The doors opened. Patton followed the guards out of the elevator and into a penthouse suite that took up the entire top floor. The outside of the hotel was gritty and worn down, but the top floor was truly a luxurious sight to behold. A large, elegant carpet took up most of the floor space. Lounge chairs and plush couches surrounded a mahogany coffee table with a glass ashtray as a centerpiece. At the opposite end of the room was a hallway that led to other rooms. A chandelier swung from the ceiling. "Mr. Critique," one of the guards said. "He's here." A figure appeared in the hallway and emerged in the lounge room. A man who looked similar to Remy in both face and build stepped into the room. He was just as short as Remy, if not shorter, and his brown hair had that same cowlick in the back that refused to stay down. His resemblance to Remy was pulled together by the sunglasses perched on his nose. A shawl was wrapped around his shoulders, and he held a cup of Starbucks in one hand. The man lowered his sunglasses to look at Patton. Instead of having brown eyes like Remy, his eyes were a striking icy blue that Patton could see even from across the room. The man spread his arms and strolled across the room towards Patton. "Poison, honey! It's been ages!" Patton tensed as the man wrapped him in a hug. "Hi, Dice. Good to see you." Dice released Patton from his hug and looked Patton up and down. "Darling, your fashion sense has only gotten worse since I've last seen you. I love it. You look absolutely dreadful. And your hair has gotten so long and curly. Let me know if you need a haircut, darling. I can arrange that for you." He linked his arm with Patton's and started for the couches. "Someone get us some coffee. You do still like coffee, don't you, hon?" Patton watched as one of the security guards made their way towards the hallway. Yeah, I guess." "Good." Dice pushed Patton onto a couch. "Have a seat, darling. You must be exhausted from your little journey from Clawmore. Why you stay in that dump of a city is beyond me." He skirted around the coffee table and sat down on a lounge chair across from Patton. He took a sip of his Starbucks. "How is Poison Dart, honey? How has life been for you these past 10 years? Patton sighed. "You can just call me Patton, Dice. That's kind of my name." "Oh, it doesn't matter to me," Dice said. "I'm okay with calling you by your old title. You don't have to make accommodations for me." He leaned back in his seat. "So, how have you been, hon?" Not bad, I guess," Patton answered. "I have 3 kids, a house in Clawmore." Dice gasped. 3 kids? Hon, I thought you were gay. Who's the lucky woman?" "I am gay," Patton said. "I adopted the kids." Dice put a hand to his chest. "Oh, thank God. For a moment there, I thought I was talking to a hetero." He raised a brow. "Although, of course, you always can be gay in spirit. Speaking of gays, how's my cousin? Has he finally stopped living under a rock and figured out I run the Critic House?" "Remy's doing fine," Patton answered. "He didn't even know about the Critic House until a few days ago. I didn't tell him who runs it." "That man is about as smart as a rock," Dice scoffed. "It's ridiculous that he didn't know about the hotel earlier. He needs to go places other than just the streets in Clawmore. Get him to take you to some other cities one of these days. Use that bike of his for more than just a few late-night joyrides." He looked up as one of his security guards walked into a room with a tray. "Thank you, darling. Set it on the coffee table. You're a dear." The guard set the tray down and retreated from the room, the other guard right behind them. Dice reached for the coffee on the tray, pouring coffee into a mug with one hand. He drank from his Starbucks cup until it was empty and set it down. Patton watched as he poured a copious amount of cream into his mug of coffee. Dice leaned back and sipped at his mug. "Go ahead," he said, waving a hand towards the tray. "Have some." Patton wasn't one to decline an offer from the person keeping him safe. He reached for a mug and poured some coffee into it. He wasn't really in the mood for anything sweet, so he left the bowl of sugar cubes alone. "So, why did you want to see me?" Patton asked, swishing his coffee around in his mug. "Can't I just ask to meet with an old friend?" Dice said. "I heard that you stopped in, and I simply wanted to see you. You make quite an impression with that bounty on your head. Half the world probably knows where you are now. I just had to talk to you myself and get the full story of what's happening. You know I love gossip." Patton raised an eyebrow. He wasn't buying it. Dice sighed. "Okay, fine. I was wondering why you got back in the business." "Back in the business?" Patton squeaked. "I'm not in the business. I'm in hiding." Dice threw his head back and laughed. Hiding? Oh, honey, you could not have come to a worse place. Everyone who's anyone around here stays in this hotel at least once in their lives. If you were really hiding, baby, you would have flown to Russia and changed your name. How was I to think you were hiding? Patton clenched his fist in growing frustration. This was the only place I could think to go. No one can get to me here. I don't want to be too far away from my kids, or Remy. Dice sipped at his coffee. Right, Remy. Of course you wouldn't want to leave him behind. You and him are pretty close, aren't you? Tell me, have the two of you gotten hitched yet? Patton nearly choked on his coffee. He lowered his mug and stared at Dice. Hitched? Me and Remy aren't dating. He's just a friend. Unfortunately. Dice nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Right, just friends. I see how it is, he said with a wink. Well, it's not like I haven't tried to make it obvious that I like him. I've been trying to get a reaction from him for years. He's just so oblivious. Patton slumped in his seat. I'm not going to tell him, though. Not now. There's too much going on. Understandable. Dice took a sip of coffee. Anyway, tell me, Poison, what compelled you to adopt kids? That doesn't sound like something the poison dart I know would do. The poison dart you know doesn't really exist anymore, Patton said. I've changed a lot. Dice shrugged. Well, you still take your coffee black. That's something. He finished off his own coffee and set his mug on the table. Tell me about your kids, hon. What are they like? Patton tapped his fingers on his mug. There are 3 of them. A 15-year-old and 2 11-year-olds. Twins. They're the light of my life, pretty much. They're not in public school. A friend of mine has been tutoring them. They're very smart kids. I don't know where I would be without them. Well, Dice said, it does sound like you care about them. You really have changed since I last saw you, haven't you? Patton nodded. I'm not in the business anymore. I haven't done a job in 10 years. Dice hummed. So your last target you had was Janus Chimera, and the man still lives. Did you drop out of the business because you failed? No. Patton ran a hand through his hair and set his mug down. His coffee was going to go cold at this rate. Janus was my target for a while, but I strayed from my contract and had to run. Wrath would have killed me otherwise. Dice barked out a laugh. Oh, dear, I nearly forgot it was Wrath who wanted you to kill him. Their old leader hated him. Well, their old leader is dead now, so there's no use talking about it, Patton mumbled. I suppose you're right. Can't speak ill of the dead, can we? Dice said with a grin. However, I am curious as to how you used to work. You were quite the silent killer, weren't you? I guess. Patton shifted in his seat. He didn't like talking about this. So why did you kill the old leader of Wrath in such an obvious way? It really wasn't your style, darling. Everyone saw it. Patton grit his teeth, hesitant to answer. His left index finger twitched. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing. I didn't plan it. I just did it. Dice lowered his sunglasses. His bright gaze pierced right through Patton. But why did you do that? You know it would get you in trouble, honey. Why do something like that? I wanted to go out with a bang. A smile tugged at his lips. Literally. Dice covered his mouth with the back of his hand as he laughed. Oh, hon, it is so good to see you haven't lost your sense of humor. I adore your puns, darling. I was beginning to worry you would run out of joke material. He stifled another chuckle. Anyway, was that really the full reason? Patton let his smile fall. I don't know. I knew I was going to leave the business after that, so I wanted to do something I'd never done before. I just wanted my last kill to be memorable. At the time, I wanted people to know Poison Dart as the one who killed the leader of Wrath's Blade. But why not Chimera? Dice asked. He's one of the heads of one of the biggest gangs in America. What made killing Nemesis Justice so much more appealing than killing Janus Chimera? Patton heaved a sigh. I met Janus. After what I did to his bodyguard, he was devastated. I had every chance to kill him, but I chickened out. When the leader of Wrath asked to meet with Janus in public so I could have a chance to kill him, I couldn't do it. Chimera is more ethically sound than Wrath, if that even matters in this business. And I figured if I was going to be killing the leader of a gang anyway, I might as well spare the lesser of two evils. Ethically sound, Dice scoffed. Since when do you have a moral code? Why, 13 years ago, you threatened my life over a leak in your hotel room. When did you get morals? Patton grimaced. After I pushed a college student out of a window with the intent to kill her, and she ended up alive with PTSD and a prosthetic leg. That would do it, I suppose. Being an assassin must be a taxing job. Dice crossed his legs. So, you're sure you're not going back in the business? I'm sure. Dice sighed. Darling, you have so much talent. Why do you not use it? Patton opened his mouth to respond, but he couldn't make any words come out. Being an assassin really was the only thing he was good at. He didn't like hurting people, but if he was pulled back into the criminal underground, what else was he supposed to do? Dice motioned for Patton to stand. Come here, darling. Patton stood reluctantly and walked around the coffee table. Dice took Patton's arm and pulled him onto the couch next to him. Dice turned on the couch to face Patton and took both of his hands in his. Darling, you have so much unused potential, he said, his voice soft. You could do incredible things in this business. Do not let all that potential go to waste. But if I go back to doing this, my kids will be in danger, Patton protested. They're already in trouble. They'll constantly be in trouble if I go back to this. Dice tilted his head and smiled. Poison, honey, that's your whole problem. You're not using your full potential to protect them or yourself. You are capable of so much. You could run this city if you wanted. You may have changed, but the poison dart I know is still in there, and he wouldn't hesitate to do whatever he had to in order to keep himself safe. Half the country is after you, darling. It's time to come out of hiding and let people know you're not to be fucked with. Dice smirked and looked at Patton over his sunglasses. Give them hell, Poison. The sincerity in Dice's eyes burned into Patton's soul. He didn't know what to say. Maybe he had a point. Maybe it was time to come out of the shadows. Dice patted him on the cheek. Think on it, honey. He let go of Patton's hand. You can go back to your room now. Is there anything you need while you're here? Patton hesitated. He didn't want to ask Dice to do anything for him. Dice was already doing so much just by letting him stay in the hotel. Could you keep an eye out for my friends? Patton asked finally. Remy might stop by. There's also a guy named Thomas Sanders. White guy, red leather jacket, clearly gay. And Andy, East Asian girl, kind of emo, also very clearly gay. I never learned her last name. Can your guards let me know if any of them come in? Of course, baby. Anything for an old friend. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a keycard. Here, for if you ever want to use your old room in the penthouse. Patton took the card. Thank you. He stood and walked to the elevator, fiddling with the sleeves on his hoodie. He really needed to take some time to mull over Dice's words before he decided on what to do about his situation. Patton paused at the elevator. Dice? Yes, darling. If it's okay with you, there's one more person I'd like you to keep watch for. Dice raised a brow. And who's that? Price Princeton, bounty hunter. Dyed bright red hair, white jacket, East Asian lady about 20 or so years old. And what do you plan on doing if she does stop by? Dice asked, a curious lilt in his voice. Patton's trigger finger twitched. I'm going to give her hell. Dice's face split into a full-on smile. That's my boy. He motioned towards the elevator. Consider it done, darling. Go have a nap. I'll set a guard outside your door so no one bugs you. Patton stepped into the elevator, Dice's words still ringing in his ears. Andy didn't think Logic and Crofters would contact her again, but apparently she'd been wrong. She had been messing around on her laptop, waiting for Thomas to wake up, when she checked her messages in the forum page and spotted a new message. She raised her eyebrow, a little curious. She was pretty sure she'd done everything he'd asked of her. She opened the message. Ma'am/sir/etc. I'm sorry to ask this of you, but I have another little thing I need help with, if you're willing to assist me. It's related to the kidnapping I asked you to look into. Andy considered it. After everything she's done for this guy, he owed her. She could certainly use him to pull a favor or two with Chimera in the future. Sure thing. What do you need? She waited for a response. When she got one, a grin split across her face as she read through it. So here's the plan. Chapter 38. The Orange Man is scary. I got the location, Logan said. Where are we going? Teal asked, gripped tight on the steering wheel. Abandoned warehouse, near Cabra Street, Logan responded. Turn left. Logan glanced from his screen to the street ahead as Teal drove. They already made a game plan, and Logan prayed that it would work. He was not leaving this building without Roman and Remus. They arrived at their destination within a minute or two. Logan stared at the run-down, long-abandoned warehouse in front of them. A car was parked outside. One glance at the license plate told Logan that it was the same one he'd seen on the street cameras. Another car was parked next to it. It was an ugly, bright orange color that figuratively burned Logan's retinas. Janus grimaced at the orange car. Looks like he's already here. He turned to look at Logan. Are you ready? Logan glanced at his screen to make sure Janus's phone was connected to his laptop. Yes. Good luck in there. Janus leaned forward and pecked Logan on the cheek. You and your hacker friend can do this. I trust you. Janus and Moggy both hopped out of the car and made their way to the door. Logan kept the feed from Janus's phone open, despite the fact that nothing had happened yet. He also had his foreign messages opened. He'd contacted My Chemical Anxiety and asked for some additional help, and luckily they'd been willing to provide it. He was sure he'd have to pay them a very hefty sum for all the work he'd asked of them, but it was worth it to get the twins back safely. He jumped when a camera feed suddenly appeared on his screen, showing the inside of the warehouse. It looked like Anxiety was doing what Logan had asked of them. He couldn't get into Wrath's cameras no matter how much he tried, and he had tried in the past. He wanted to send Anxiety a quick thank you message for getting him a loophole into Wrath's security system, but he decided against it. They didn't have time for formalities. Logan glanced up at the building. Janus and Moggy were speaking to someone at the door that Logan couldn't see. He wished the cameras inside didn't have blind spots so he could see who it was. He heard their voices speaking through his laptop. Where's your bodyguard? A woman's voice asked. She is preoccupied, Janus said. This is Moggy. She's standing in for DW today. Nice to meet you, Moggy said in her usual bouncy voice. The woman hummed. Lots of weapons, huh? You really need that much to keep him safe? It doesn't hurt to be prepared, Moggy said. Whatever, the woman scoffed. Come in. The boss is expecting you. Logan turned back to his screen. He watched as Janus and Moggy entered the building with the guard at the door right in front of them. Logan narrowed his eyes when he realized it was the same woman he'd seen on the cameras at the school. Miss Sharp, the one who'd kidnapped the twins. He had half a mind to burst out of the car and punch her in the face, but he had a job to do. The inside of the warehouse would have been vast and empty, if not for the dozens of constructed walls that lined the floor. The walls made it look like Janus had stepped into a hallway, but the ceiling was still far above them, unconnected to the walls that were probably hiding closed rooms of victims in their midst. Logan was tempted to get Janus to rescue all of them, but they were only looking for the twins. They couldn't waste time with anyone else. What you looking at? Logan jumped at Teal's voice. She'd clambered over the seat and was leaning over to look at his screen. Logan sighed. I'm doing my job. Go do yours. It's not time yet. She peered at the screen, idly kicking her legs. So, who's your hacker friend? No one you need to know about. Logan shrugged Teal off as she leaned against his shoulder. Dude, get off. No. Teal poked his arm. Did you make a friend? What's their name? Do you like them? Jesus, you're insufferable, Logan grumbled. He turned his full attention to his laptop. He and Teal watched as Janus and Moggy followed the woman into the warehouse. Moggy stuck close behind Janus, much the same way DW did. Logan switched between cameras to follow their progress. He's been wanting to see you, Sharp's voice said through the speakers of his laptop. He was excited when he got here. I imagine he was, Janus said. Am I allowed to have my bodyguard in the room? He did request that it be a meeting between just the two of you. Me and your bodyguard can stay outside the room. Sharp cast a distasteful glance at Moggy's purple pigtails. I'm fine with that, Janus said. Logan took a deep breath. Okay, here we go, he muttered, as he switched between cameras, searching for wherever Roman and Remus were being held. He listened to Janus's audio as he worked. He didn't hear much more than footsteps, but they finally stopped, and he heard a door being opened. Logan stopped scrolling through the cameras when he spotted two familiar people in one of the feeds. Roman and Remus were both tied to chairs that sat back to back, enclosed together in one dark room. One wall was covered in various weapons. Logan shuddered at the sight. However, it looked like neither of the twins were injured, which was a relief. Damn, Teal whispered. That's a torture room if I've ever seen one. And I've seen plenty. Logan checked the camera number. The twins were in room 135. He sent out a mass text to their backup to let them know where the twins were. He didn't see any blood or injuries on the kids, but it was hard to tell through the blurry camera. He hoped they were okay. "Justice," Janus's voice said through the laptop. "Good to see you again. It's been a while." Someone responded, but their voice was muffled, and Logan couldn't make out the words. He shifted through the cameras, searching for whatever room Janus had stepped into, but Logan couldn't find him anywhere. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at it. A message stared back at him. "Hey, it's My Chemical Anxiety from the forums. Sorry for finding your phone. It's easier to use 2 devices. I can't find the room Chimera went into. I don't think there's a camera in there." Logan cursed under his breath. So there was no way to keep an eye on Janus. Great. He tapped out a response. "That's all right. Everyone is where we need them. I'll wait another minute to see how Janus's discussion goes. If things go south, you know what to do?" "Yep." Logan turned his attention back to Janus's audio feed. "You know why I'm here," Janus was saying. "Did you not get the email I sent you?" The other voice laughed, a gleefully cruel sound that bordered on something wild and manic. Logan shivered at the noise. Whoever that laugh belonged to was not someone he ever wanted to meet. He was almost glad their voice was too muffled for him to hear when they spoke. "That was not the point of my message," Janus said. "I'm here to bargain for the twins." The other person said something, and Janus scoffed. "Don't try that with me, Justice. I can tell when you're lying." A pause. "Your finger twitches. He has that same tic. The 2 of you are much more similar than you know." The other person's response was so loud, all Logan could hear from the speaker was garbled feedback. He winced in sympathy. Janus wouldn't like someone yelling at him. Was he okay? Oddly enough, when Janus spoke next, his tone was calm and collected, maybe even a little smug. "Oh, I'm sorry, darling. Is that a touchy subject for you? I'll leave it alone, then. Apologies, you should have told me not to mention it. How was I to know? Anyways, the twins?" Logan heard a growl that bordered on animalistic from the other person in the room, but it settled into muffled grumbling. Janus sighed. "Well, Justice, are you willing to bargain for the kids or not? If not, then there's really no point in me being here." Their conversation tapered into hushed words that Logan couldn't make out. He tried to turn up the volume, only to find it was up as far as it would go. He wanted to know what Janus was saying. A text popped up onto his phone. "What are they saying?" "Not sure. I'll keep you updated and let you know if and when you should act." "Sure thing." Teal narrowed her eyes at Logan's laptop. "What are they talking about?" "I wish I knew," Logan said, frustration building up inside him. He just wanted to know what was going on. Was that too much to ask? The other person's cold laugh crackled from the speakers again. They said something, and Janus snapped something back. Something angry yet quiet that Logan couldn't make out. He hissed out his words like an angered snake, and Logan could almost picture Janus sitting across from this other person, teeth bared and body tense like a cobra about to strike. Logan had never seen what Janus looked like when he was genuinely angry before, but just that mental image that came with his voice made him shudder. Sometimes he forgot how powerful Janus really was. When Janus spoke next, his voice was loud enough for his phone to pick up the words. "Justice, you knew exactly what you were messing with when you went after these kids. Do you really think he'll have mercy on you when he finds out? After all, he didn't have mercy on your father." A burst of sound exploded through the speaker, as if someone had hit their fist on a table. Logan turned his volume down to avoid the loud feedback of the person's deafening shouts. Christ, that other man had a temper. To his surprise, the next sound he heard was Janus laughing, but it wasn't his usual warm, joyful laugh. It was more cruel and taunting, like a bully cackling at a kid he'd just pushed off the monkey bars at a playground. "There's my Aries," Janus said, a tone of smug triumph to his voice. "It's so easy to get you riled up, darling. Bartering with you when you're not angry is a trial. I'd figured I'd make things easier for both of us this way." He chuckled, and Logan could almost imagine him sitting in his chair with his legs crossed, lounging back as if he owned the place. "You know exactly what he's capable of. Just look at what he did 10 years ago. He spared me, of all people, in favor of killing your father. Doesn't that upset you, darling?" The other person spoke, and this time, their voice was just at the right volume for Janus's phone to pick up the words. "Don't patronize me, Chimera." Logan wanted to shut his laptop and drive away. Their voice rumbled like the growl of an angry lion. A fire of hatred burned in their tone. Logan had no doubt that they would kill Janus right then and there if they could. He wanted to call Janus and tell him to get the hell out of there. A text lit up his phone screen. "Do you know what they're talking about?" Logan sent a response. I don't know. He's speaking to the leader of Wrath. That's all I know about the conversation. He's supposed to be convincing them to give us Patton's kids back. I don't know what all this talk of threats is about. Would you perhaps know? A reply appeared within a few seconds. I might, but if you don't know, I'm not sharing. Top secret stuff, I guess. Logan grit his teeth. This random hacker knew more than he did about whatever was going on. He just couldn't be good enough for Janus to trust him with this. Logan took a deep breath. That wasn't what he should be focusing on. He pushed those thoughts deep, deep down. Get ready, he told Teal. Teal grinned and held up a grappling hook. I'm already ready. Logan stared at the grappling hook. Where were you keeping that? None of your business. She shimmied across the seat to the car door. Logan turned back to his phone and sent Anxiety a text. Now would be a good time, if you please. I don't know how Janus's conversation is going, or if he's even getting anywhere. I think it's time to resort to Plan B. You read my mind, nerd. Logan looked at the camera views on his laptop screen. One by one, each one cut to static. Hey! Wrath's leader shouted through Janus's audio feed. What is this? Janus's voice said. Justice, was this a trap? What are you planning? You think I turned off the lights? Why the hell would I do that? I need to see. It must be a power outage then, Janus said. I would assume it would be out citywide. Are you sure you didn't have anything to do with this, Justice? Why would I take out the whole city's power? Wrath's leader snapped. Fair enough. Shall we continue talking, or should we put this off for another day? Logan heard the sound of a door opening. You're stuck here until the power's back on, Sharp's voice sighed. The doors are electronically locked. We'll have to wait it out. Mr. Chimera, are you okay? Maggie's voice asked. I'm fine. Don't worry, we'll get back to the bank eventually. Logan shut his laptop. He shot a quick text to Anxiety, saying a brief thank you for everything they did, and a promise to contact them again to discuss payment. He quickly unknotted his blue tie and tossed it on the seat beside him, snatching a black hoodie off the floor of the car and pulling it on. He shoved his phone in his pocket and scrambled out of the car behind Teal. They hurried up to the building. They likely didn't have long until the Wrath agents in the building caught on to their plan, so they had to move fast. Teal cackled gleefully as she aimed her grappling hook at the top of the building. Ready, little bitch? Little, Logan said. I'm not still shorter than you, am I? Teal fired the grappling gun, and it latched onto the roof of the warehouse. No, but you're still younger. Yes, by 2 minutes. Holy shit! He was cut off when Teal grabbed him and let the grappling hook reel them in. He let out a shriek of surprise. Teal planted her feet on the side of the building, still holding Logan with one arm. What? You didn't know we were both going up? I probably could have gotten my own hook, he muttered, embarrassed by his own fear. It would have been safer. Safety doesn't matter. Rescuing these kids does. We can't rescue them if we die. Touché. The two of them quickly scaled the side of the building, using Teal's grappling hook to haul them up. The shallow wound in Logan's side burned a little from the effort, but he grit his teeth and ignored it. About a dozen other Chimera agents were already waiting for them once they reached the roof. One of them crossed her arms. Took you long enough. Logan smoothed out his shirt. It took a while to put everything in place. Is everyone ready? More than ready, someone else piped up. I haven't done a rescue mission in years. Then let's get going, Logan said. Teal grabbed his arm and dragged him across the roof as the rest of the group dispersed. Slow down, he said, trying to yank his wrist out of her grip. Someone will hear our footsteps. Who cares? Teal slowed to a stop and knelt down. Put your mask on while I cut this bitch open. Right. Logan pulled a lower face mask out of his pocket. He pulled the loops over his ears and straightened the mask over his face. This way, no one in the building would be able to recognize him, hopefully, especially not in the dark. He watched as Teal cut through the roof with a metal cutter. They were lucky the metal was thin, or this would have taken much longer. Teal cut half a square into the roof. She pulled on a pair of thick gloves and pried the metal back. She stood. After you, she said, gesturing to the hole in the roof. Logan picked up the grappling hook. I'll be back with the kids. He jammed the hook into the edge of the hole. After making sure it was secure, he lowered himself through the hole, gripping tight to the end of the rope connected to the hook. It was dark in the warehouse, but the light from the hole in the ceiling was enough to show him the floor. He gently sat down on the floor and let go of the hook. Teal pushed the metal back over the hole to hide the light. Other agents on the roof were doing the same. Logan tiptoed through the warehouse, following the aisles of constructed walls. He glanced at the doors. The room Roman and Remus were being kept in didn't seem to be near where he had dropped in. Someone else might find them. All he had to do was keep an eye out for security guards. He kept one hand on the knife at his belt as he crept through the shadows. He didn't see anyone so far, but that could change in the second. A shadow of a person appeared far in front of him. He heard someone's frustrated grumbling getting closer. He pressed his back against the wall behind him. The person tripped. "Fuck," they muttered, and Logan recognized her voice as Sharp, the woman who had kidnapped the twins. "Man can't find the goddamn fuse box by himself. Why do I have to do all of his fucking..." Her words trailed off into quiet muttering. Logan watched as she passed. With her out of commission, that would be one less person out of the way. And well, she was the one who tricked the twins into getting kidnapped. She deserved a little justice. He tiptoed after her. In one swift move, he lunged forward and checked her into the wall. She yelped as she hit the metal, but she didn't have time to retaliate. He put her into a headlock and squeezed his arm around her neck. It didn't take long for her to stop struggling and pass out. He gently lowered her to the ground. "Sorry," he whispered, although he really wasn't. Just part of the job. He continued through the darkness, keeping an eye out for anyone else. He only saw the occasional Chimera agent, and a couple passed-out Wrath guards. It seemed like everything was going well so far. He jumped when he heard a voice. "Oh, come on, Justice. I'm sure this is just a normal blackout. Don't get so hung up about it." Logan pressed himself against a wall. He wasn't too worried about being found, not even by Wrath's leader. Even if he was found, there was no way he could be linked back to Chimera on appearances alone. This was meant to be perceived as a break-in by some no-name gang. That being said, he didn't doubt that Wrath's leader could and would kill him on sight. Maybe staying hidden was more important than he thought. A couple flashlight beams bobbed in the darkness. He tensed as a pair of footsteps grew closer. Someone turned a corner and a light landed right on him. He froze like a deer in headlights. He couldn't see who was behind the light. The person stepped closer and aimed the beam away so he could see. Moggy smiled. "Everything going okay?" she whispered. Before he could answer, he was interrupted by the sound of someone coughing. He grimaced in sympathy. The coughing sounded wet and painful, grating against the person's throat. He heard a thump, followed by more coughing. "Justice?" Janus's voice said, oddly soft and concerned compared to how he'd been talking to that person earlier. "Ares, are you okay?" Moggy gave Logan one last glance before she hurried off to help with whatever was happening. He heard Janus tell Moggy to run and get some water. The painful coughing echoed off the metal walls. Using this convenient distraction to his advantage, Logan slipped past the collection of voices and crept on through the warehouse, glancing up at the numbers on the doors as he passed. He nearly bumped into someone and drew his knife, ready to strike, but he spotted the mask on their face and lowered his weapon. It was just another Chimera agent, probably Alex by the looks of them. The two of them stuck close together as they made their way towards the twins' room. He didn't know if anyone had found them already, but he wasn't willing to take that chance. He spotted a person kneeling in front of a door. He squinted to see who it was. It was another Chimera agent, trying to pick the lock of a door. Logan and Alex approached. Sure enough, it was the twins' room. "How's it going?" Alex whispered. "Not good," the other agent hissed. "I suck at this. You do it." They stood aside and Alex knelt in front of the lock. Logan couldn't see what they were doing, but they were one of the best lockpicks in this branch of Chimera. If they couldn't get the lock open, no one could. The lock clicked. Alex stood and waved to the door. "After you." The other agent gave Logan a thumbs up. "We'll keep watch out here." Logan nodded. He stepped past Alex and opened the door a crack. It was even darker in here, but the kids must have heard it open, because he heard one of them squeak in fear. Logan pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. Roman and Remus were tied to their chairs, back to back, just like he'd seen in the cameras. They squinted in the light. Roman's eyes shone with tears, and Remus was trembling like a leaf. The ropes holding them down were tied so tight. Logan wondered if either of them had lost feeling in their limbs yet. He drew his knife. Roman spotted it and started to squirm, tears pouring down his face. He started to cry. Logan hoped no one would hear and come to investigate. Logan sliced through the ropes. As soon as Roman was free, he leapt out of his chair and sprinted for the door, only to be stopped by Alex. They scooped him up into their arms and put a hand over his mouth. "Sorry, kid," Alex muttered. "Can't have you giving us away." Logan shut off his flashlight. Remus stared at Logan, his petrified look morphing into one of angry determination. Logan picked him up and Remus squirmed. "Fuck you, you fucking goddamn bastard!" Remus hissed, kicking wildly. "I'll fucking fight you! God damn it, where is my fucking mace? You fucking fuck, let me go!" "Remus, please watch your language," Logan said. "And don't worry, we're getting you out of here." They left the room. "Where's your exit point?" Logan asked Alex. "Southeast corner," Alex answered. "We'll meet you on the ground." Logan ran off, Remus in his arms. Remus cursed more and held onto Logan to keep himself from falling to the ground. However, his eyes widened when Alex ran in the opposite direction with Roman. He struggled more. "No!" he squeaked. "Roman!" In a panic, Logan covered Remus's mouth. "It's okay. We're not separating you. You'll see him outside." A sharp pain exploded through Logan's hand, and he held back a squeak. "Remus," he hissed. "Did you just bite me?" Remus wiggled in Logan's arms, desperate to break free and run after his brother. Logan glanced down at the teeth marks in his hand. Blood beaded on his hand. Christ, that child had some strong power in his jaws. Remus growled in frustration and reached out for Roman as if he could grab him from here. Logan sighed and kept running through the warehouse, muttering quiet assurances to Remus along the way, hoping he could help him through his fear. He heard someone shout from somewhere nearby. He slowed to a stop and glanced around, searching for the sound of the voice. He saw a flashlight beam making its way towards him. Logan didn't know who it belonged to, but he wasn't taking any chances. He ducked past a wall, holding Remus close to his chest. It was difficult to see, but he had to get back to his exit. He sneaked through the warehouse, a bit slower this time to keep himself from making too much noise. Remus was still squirming. Logan felt a pang of guilt for scaring him, but he didn't have time to stop and comfort the kid. He needed to get out of there fast. He turned another corner and stopped in his tracks, heart pounding. It seemed he hadn't exactly put Miss Sharp out of commission for as long as he thought he did, because now she was right in front of him, holding a gun and looking very, very angry. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this series. If you like what you hear and you want to read more, you can find the link to the fic and the author in the description. If you want to check out other podfics I've done, you can click on the playlist linked on the screen. See you next time!